The rain battered Caleb's bedroom window like it wanted to break in, each drop a fist against the glass, mirroring the storm raging in my chest. I was 22, sprawled on his couch, staring at the ceiling of his suburban Ohio home, wondering how I'd ended up here, heart pounding, palms sweaty, every nerve screaming that tonight was different. Caleb, my best friend since middle school, was upstairs, oblivious to the chaos he'd unleashed in me with a single, careless glance. We'd been inseparable since 7th grade, when he'd punched Tommy Wheeler for calling me a freak during gym class. Caleb was the golden boy, quarterback, prom king, the guy everyone loved without trying. I was Ethan, the quiet artist, always sketching in the margins of my notebooks, always watching him a little too closely. I'd known I was gay since I was 15, but I'd buried it deep, terrified of losing him. Caleb was straight. At least, I thought he was. Until tonight. It was just a sleepover, something we'd done 100 times. His parents were out of town, and he'd invited me over for pizza, video games, and old action movies. Our usual routine. But something fell off from the moment I walked through the door. His smile was too warm, his laugh too quick, and when he handed me a soda, his fingers lingered on mine for a split second longer than they should have. I told myself I was imagining it. I had to be. Yo, Ethan, you good? Caleb's voice snapped me back to the living room. He was slouched on the other end of the couch, one leg kicked up on the coffee table, his white t-shirt riding up just enough to show a sliver of tanned skin. The TV was playing some explosions-heavy blockbuster, but neither of us was watching. Yeah, just zoned out. I lied, my voice catching. I tugged at the sleeve of my denim jacket, trying to hide the heat creeping up my neck. He tilted his head, studying me. You've been weird all night, man. What's up? His dark eyes held mine, steady and searching, like he could see straight through the walls I'd built. I swallowed hard, the air between us suddenly too thick. Nothing, just tired. He didn't buy it. Caleb never did. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the space between us shrank. You sure? 'Cause you look like you're about to bolt. My heart thudded so loud I was sure he could hear it. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to scream that I'd been in love with him for years, that every laugh, every late-night talk, every stupid inside joke had carved his name deeper into my soul. But I couldn't. Not when he was dating Sarah. Not when he'd always been the straight guy who didn't see me that way. Instead, I forced a grin. Maybe I'm just scared you're gonna make me watch another one of your terrible movies. He laughed, a deep, warm sound that made my chest ache. Low blow, dude. My taste is impeccable. He grabbed a slice of pizza and tossed it onto a paper plate, sliding it toward me. Eat. You're too skinny. I rolled my eyes but took the plate, grateful for the distraction. We fell back into our rhythm, joking, arguing about whether Die Hard was better than Lethal Weapon, pretending everything was normal. But it wasn't. Every time he looked at me, I felt it. A pull, a spark, something alive and dangerous. As the night wore on, the rain slowed to a drizzle, and the movie credits rolled. Caleb stretched, his arms flexing in a way that made it hard to focus. You crashing on the couch, or what? He asked, standing up. I hesitated. His guest room was an option, but we'd always shared his room during sleepovers, sprawled on the floor in sleeping bags like we were kids. Your room, if that's cool, I said, trying to sound casual. He grinned. Always, man. We headed upstairs, the house creaking under our steps. His room was a mess, clothes strewn across the floor, a football helmet perched on his desk, posters of classic cars and bands plastered on the walls. It smelled like him. Cedar, laundry detergent, and something faintly sweet I could never place. I dropped my backpack by the door and kicked off my shoes, trying to ignore the way my pulse raced. Caleb was already rummaging through his dresser, pulling out a spare blanket. You want the floor or the bed? He asked, his back to me. Floor's fine, I said quickly, grabbing a sleeping bag from the corner. He turned, one eyebrow raised. You sure? Bed's big enough for both of us. My breath caught. He said it so casually, like it was nothing, but the words lit a fire in my chest. Nah, I'm good, I managed, unrolling the sleeping bag with shaky hands. Suit yourself. He shrugged and climbed into bed, leaving the lamp on. The soft light cast shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp line of his jaw, the curve of his lips. I forced myself to look away, focusing on the sleeping bag zipper like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. We talked for a while about college, his football scholarship, my art portfolio, the future. But the conversation felt different, heavier, like we were both dancing around something unsaid. Eventually, silence settled over us, broken only by the faint hum of the rain outside. I thought he'd fallen asleep. I was staring at the ceiling, trying to calm my racing thoughts, when I heard him shift. "Ethan." His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Yeah." I turned my head, and my heart stopped. He was propped up on one elbow, looking at me, his face unreadable but intense. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, without warning, he slid out of bed and knelt beside me, so close I could feel the warmth of his breath. My pulse roared in my ears. "Caleb, what?" He pressed a finger to my lips, silencing me. His eyes were wide, searching, like he was trying to solve a puzzle only he could see. It was soft at first, tentative, like he was testing the waters. But when I didn't pull away, when I couldn't, because every fiber of my being was screaming for this, he deepened the kiss, his hand finding the back of my neck, pulling me closer. The world fell away. There was only him, the taste of him, the heat of his skin, the impossible reality of this moment. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine, his breath ragged. "I'm sorry," he whispered, but he didn't let go. "I didn't know how else to tell you." I couldn't speak. My heart was a wildfire, burning through every doubt, every fear. All I could do was stare at him, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Caleb, my straight best friend, had kissed me, and nothing would ever be the same. The air in Caleb's room felt charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. I sat frozen on the sleeping bag, my lips still tingling from his kiss, my mind a chaotic blur of hope and disbelief. Caleb was still kneeling beside me, his hand lingering on my neck, his eyes searching mine for something, forgiveness, acceptance, I couldn't tell. "I didn't plan this," he said finally, his voice rough, like he was dragging the words from somewhere deep. I couldn't keep pretending." "Pretending what?" My voice cracked, barely above a whisper. I needed him to say it, to make it real, because part of me was still convinced this was a dream I'd wake up from, alone and aching. He sat back on his heels, running a hand through his hair. The lamp cast a soft glow over his face, highlighting the tension in his jaw. "Pretending I don't feel something for you," he said. "I've been trying to ignore it for months, Ethan. Maybe longer. But tonight, seeing you here, I couldn't." My heart lurched. Months? The word echoed in my head, unraveling years of assumptions. All those moments I'd dismissed, his lingering glances, the way he'd find excuses to touch my arm, the late-night texts that felt too personal, suddenly snapped into focus. "You're with Sarah," I said, the words tasting bitter. He flinched, like I'd struck him. "I know. It's not fair to her. Or to you." He looked down, his hands clenching into fists. "I told myself I could keep things normal, that I could just be your friend. But I can't. Not anymore." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But fear clawed at me, sharp and cold. "Caleb, you're straight. You've always been straight. What's this even mean?" He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "I thought I was too. I mean, I've never looked at another guy the way I look at you. I don't know what I am, Ethan. I just know I've been going crazy trying to figure it out, and the only thing that makes sense is you." The vulnerability in his voice broke something in me. Caleb, the guy who never flinched, who faced linebackers and heartbreak with the same easy grin, was unraveling in front of me. I reached out, my hand trembling, and touched his cheek. He leaned into it, closing his eyes, and for a moment, we were the only two people in the world. But reality crashed back in. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "You're gonna wake up tomorrow and regret this. Or Sarah's gonna find out, and—" "Don't," he cut me off, his eyes snapping open. "Don't do that. Don't make this smaller than it is." He grabbed my hand, holding it tight. "I don't know what happens next, but I know I'm not walking away from this. From you." My chest ached with the weight of his words. I wanted to pull him close, to lose myself in him again, but doubt gnawed at me. What if this was a fleeting impulse? What if he woke up and decided he'd made a mistake? I'd spent years guarding my heart against this exact moment, and now it was cracking open, raw and exposed. Before I could say anything, he stood, pulling me up with him. "Come on," he said, his voice softer now. "Let's not sleep on the floor tonight." I followed him to the bed, my head spinning. We climbed in, the mattress dipping under our weight, and for a while, we just lay there, side by side, staring at the ceiling. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, full of everything we weren't saying. His hand found mine under the blanket, his fingers lacing through mine, and I let myself believe, just for a moment, that this could be real. Morning came too fast. Sunlight streamed through the window, harsh and unforgiving, pulling me out of a dreamless sleep. Caleb was still beside me, his arms slung across my chest, his breathing slow and steady. For a second, I let myself savor it, the warmth of him, the quiet intimacy of waking up together. Then panic set in. What now? I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him, and grabbed my phone from my backpack. There were 3 missed texts from my sister, Mia, asking if I was still at Caleb's. I typed a quick reply, my fingers shaking, and glanced back at him. He stirred, blinking awake, and when he saw me, he smiled. A slow, sleepy smile that made my heart skip. "Morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," I echoed, forcing a smile. "You asleep okay?" He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Better than I have in a while." He looked at me, his expression softening. "You freaking out yet?" I laughed despite myself. "Little bit." He swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood, closing the distance between us. "Don't," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "We'll figure this out. Together." I wanted to believe him, but the world outside his bedroom door felt like a minefield. Sarah, his teammates, my own family, who didn't even know I was gay. How could we navigate this without everything blowing up? Before I could spiral further, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He glanced at it, and his face changed, tightened, like he'd been caught. "It's Sarah," he said, his voice flat. My stomach dropped. "You gonna answer?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Not yet. I need to talk to her in person. Break things off." The words hit me like a punch. "You're serious?" He met my eyes, steady and sure. "Yeah, Ethan. I am." I didn't know whether to feel elated or terrified. Maybe both. All I knew was that last night had changed everything, and there was no going back. The kitchen smelled of burnt toast and fresh coffee, a strange mix that grounded me as I sat at Caleb's counter, clutching a mug. He was across from me, flipping pancakes with a focus that felt almost comical, like he was trying to solve world peace with batter. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched every time his phone buzzed with another text from Sarah. "You don't have to do that, you know," I said, nodding at the pancakes. "I'm fine with cereal." He shot me a look, half smirking. "Let me have this, Ethan. I'm trying to be domestic." I laughed, but it felt hollow. The weight of last night hung between us, unspoken but impossible to ignore. His kiss, his confession, the way he'd held my hand. It was all real, but now, in the harsh light of day, it felt fragile, like something that could shatter with one wrong move. His phone buzzed again, and this time, he sighed and picked it up. His thumb hovered over the screen, and I saw the conflict in his eyes. "I'm meeting her at the diner later," he said, not looking at me. "Gotta end it." My chest tightened. "You sure about this? You and Sarah, you've been together for, what, a year?" He set the phone down hard. "Doesn't matter. It's not fair to keep stringing her along when I'm..." He stopped, like the words were too big to say out loud. "When you're what?" I pressed, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. He looked at me then, his eyes raw and unguarded. "When I'm in love with you." The world stopped. My mug slipped from my hands, hitting the counter with a dull thud. Coffee sloshed over the rim, but I barely noticed. "Caleb, don't say anything," he cut in, turning back to the stove. "I know it's a lot. I know it's messy, but it's true." The pancakes were done, and he slid a plate in front of me, sitting down with his own. We ate in silence, the the clink of forks against plates the only sound. Every bite felt like a countdown to something I couldn't predict. After breakfast, we cleaned up, moving around each other like we were afraid to get too close. He grabbed his keys and said, "I'll be back in a couple hours. You sticking around?" "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. "I'll be here." He nodded, then paused at the door. "Ethan, whatever happens, I meant what I said." And then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. I spent the next hour pacing, my mind a tangle of hope and dread. I ended up in his room, sitting on his bed, staring at a photo on his nightstand. Us at graduation, arms around each other, grinning like the world was ours. I wondered if we'd ever be that carefree again. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. A text from Mia. "You okay? You're acting weird." I typed back, "I'm fine. Just stuff's happening." Her reply was instant. "Spill. Now." I hesitated, then put the phone down. I couldn't tell her yet. Not until I knew what this was, what Caleb and I were. When he came back, his face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed. I stood, my heart in my throat. "How'd it go?" He dropped his keys on the counter and sank onto the couch, rubbing his face. "It sucked," she cried. I felt like garbage. I sat beside him, careful to keep some distance. "What did you tell her?" "The truth." "Well, part of it." He glanced at me, guilt flickering in his eyes. I said I wasn't in love with her anymore. I didn't mention you." I nodded, ignoring the sting. "Probably for the best." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "I hate hurting people, Ethan." But I couldn't keep lying to her. Or to myself. I wanted to ask what that meant for us, but the word stuck. Instead, I said, "You did the right thing." He turned his head, his gaze locking onto mine. "Did I? Because right now, it feels like I'm screwing everything up." "You're not," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "You're being honest. That's more than most people do." He reached for my hand, his fingers warm and steady. "I don't know how to do this, Ethan, but I want to try. With you." My heart swelled, but fear lingered. This town, it's not exactly welcoming. You know that, right? He squeezed my hand. "I know, but I don't care what they think. I care about you." For the first time, I let myself believe him. We sat there, hands clasped, the weight of the world outside pressing against us, but not breaking us. Not yet. The next few days were a blur of stolen moments and unspoken questions. Caleb and I didn't talk about the kiss again, but it lived in every glance, every brush of his hand against mine. We were testing the waters, trying to figure out what we were to each other now, all while the world around us kept moving like nothing had changed. I was at the local coffee shop, sketching in my notebook, when Mia slid into the booth across from me. Her dark curls were pulled back, and her eyes were sharp, like she could see right through me. "Okay, Ethan, what's going on?" she demanded, stealing a sip of my latte. "Nothing," I said too quickly. She raised an eyebrow. "Bull, you've been dodging my texts, and you look like you're about to vibrate out of your skin. Spill." I stared at my sketch, a rough outline of Caleb's face, his jawline sharp against the page. I'd drawn him 100 times, but this one felt different, like I was trying to capture something new. "It's complicated," I muttered. "Complicated how? Did you and Caleb fight or something?" "No, it's not that." I hesitated, my heart pounding. Mia was my sister, my confidant, but I'd never told her I was gay. I'd never told anyone. "I think I'm in love with him." Her eyes widened, but she didn't look surprised. "Okay. And, I echoed, thrown. "Mia, he's a guy?" "And he was straight." "Was?" She leaned forward, her voice low. "What happened?" I told her everything. Haltingly at first, then in a rush. The sleepover, the kiss, his confession, the breakup with Sarah. By the time I finished, my hands were shaking, and I couldn't meet her eyes. She reached across the table, grabbing my hand. "Ethan, look at me." I did, reluctantly. "I'm proud of you. And I'm happy for you, if this is what you want. But are you okay? Like really okay?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know. It's a lot. He's figuring himself out, and I'm scared he'll change his mind." She squeezed my hand. "If he does, he's an idiot. But from what you're saying, it sounds like he's all in. Just be careful, okay? This town's not exactly progressive." I nodded, grateful for her, but still uneasy. She was right. Our small Ohio town wasn't known for open-mindedness. I'd heard the slurs tossed around at school, seen the way people looked at the one openly gay couple who dared to hold hands at the county fair. If Caleb and I were going to be anything, we'd have to face that. That night, I went back to Caleb's. His parents were still gone, and the house felt like our own little world, safe from judgment. We were on the couch again, a pizza box between us, when he turned to me, his expression serious. "I told my mom," he said out of nowhere. My stomach dropped. "What? Not about us." "Not yet. Just that I'm questioning things. About myself." He rubbed the back of his neck, looking nervous. She was cool about it. Said she just wants me to be happy. I blinked, trying to process. "That's good, right?" "Yeah, I think so." He hesitated, then reached for my hand. "I want to tell her about you. About us. But only if you're ready." My heart raced. "Caleb, I haven't even told my parents. Or anyone, really, except Mia." He nodded, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "No pressure. We go at your pace." I looked at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, and felt a warmth I hadn't known was possible. "Thank you," I whispered. He smiled, and then he kissed me again, slow, deliberate, like he was promising something. I melted into it, letting myself believe, just for a moment, that we could have this. But the real world wasn't far away. The next day at college, I overheard some of Caleb's teammates talking in the cafeteria. "Heard Caleb dumped Sarah," one of them said, smirking. "Bet he's already got someone else lined up." My blood ran cold. They didn't know about me, but the thought of them finding out, of the rumors, the judgment, made my chest tight. I slipped out before they noticed me, my sketchbook clutched to my chest like a shield. When I saw Caleb later, he could tell something was wrong. "What's up?" he asked, pulling me aside in the quad. I told him about the conversation, my voice low. "What if they find out? Your team, your friends, they're not going to be okay with this." His jaw tightened. "They don't get a say in who I love." The word hit me again, love. It was still so new, so fragile. "I just don't want you to lose everything because of me." He stepped closer, his voice fierce. "You're not making me do anything, Ethan. This is my choice. Our choice." I wanted to believe him, but the fear lingered, a shadow we couldn't outrun. The next week was a tightrope walk. Caleb and I were together every chance we got. Late nights at his place, quiet walks by the lake, moments stolen in the art studio where I'd sketch and he'd watch, his presence a steady warmth. But outside our bubble, the world felt like it was waiting to pounce. I came out to my parents on a Tuesday, sitting at our kitchen table with Mia for backup. My mom cried, not out of anger, but because she was scared for me, scared of what people would say, what they'd do. My dad just hugged me, his voice gruff when he said, "You're my son. That's all that matters." Their love was a lifeline, but I could see the worry in their eyes, the same worry I carried every time I left the house with Caleb. Caleb was braver than I was. He told his teammates, not about us specifically, but that he was figuring out his identity. Most of them shrugged it off, but a few, guys like Jake, the linebacker with a mouth bigger than his brain, made it clear they weren't okay with it. I saw the way they looked at him in the locker room, the way their laughter stopped when he walked by. It killed me, knowing he was taking hits for something that was as much about me as it was about him. One night, we were at a dive bar on the edge of town, a place we thought was safe because it was too run down for most of our classmates. We weren't holding hands, weren't doing anything to draw attention, but we were close, our knees brushing under the table. I was laughing at some dumb story he was telling about a botched play at practice when I saw Jake and two other guys from the team walk in. My stomach sank. Caleb followed my gaze, and his face hardened. "Ignore them," he said, his voice low. But Jake didn't ignore us. He sauntered over, a smirk on his face, his buddies trailing behind. "Well, look at this," he said, loud enough for the whole bar to hear. "Caleb and his little art buddy. Getting cozy, huh?" Caleb's hand tightened around his beer bottle. "Walk away, Jake." Jake laughed, leaning closer. "What's the matter, man? You switched teams or something?" The air went still. I could feel eyes on us, the whole bar watching. My face burned, but Caleb didn't flinch. He stood, towering over Jake, his voice deadly calm. "Yeah, and if you've got a problem with it, that's on you." Jake's smirk faltered, but he recovered quickly, stepping into Caleb's space. "You're a disgrace, man. Throwing away everything for." "Enough." The bartender, a burly guy named Lou, cut in, his voice like gravel. "Take it outside or get out." Jake glared but backed off, his buddies pulling him toward the door. Caleb sat down, his hands shaking slightly, and I reached for him under the table, squeezing his wrist. "You okay?" I whispered. He nodded, but his eyes were distant. "I'm fine. Just tired of this crap." We left soon after, the night tainted. In his car, he was quiet, his hands gripping the wheel too tight. I wanted to say something, anything, to make it better, but words felt useless. When we got back to his place, he pulled me into a hug, holding me like he was afraid I'd disappear. "I'm sorry," he murmured into my hair. "I didn't think it'd be this hard." I pulled back, looking into his eyes. "It's worth it," I said, my voice fierce. "You're worth it." He kissed me then, desperate and raw, like he was trying to drown out the world. I kissed him back, pouring every ounce of my fear and love into it, hoping it was enough to keep us afloat. The next day, I found a note slipped under my dorm room door. Just one word, scrawled in angry black ink: freak. My heart sank, but I didn't tell Caleb. He was already carrying enough. Instead, I threw myself into my art, painting a piece for my portfolio. A storm over a lake, dark and turbulent, with two figures standing at the edge, their hands clasped against the wind. It was us, or what I hoped we could be, unbreakable, no matter what came. When I showed it to Caleb, his eyes softened, and he pulled me close. "This is us," he said, his voice thick. "No matter what." But the note wasn't the last of it. Whispers followed us. On campus, at the grocery store, even at the coffee shop where Mia worked. I could handle it, but seeing Caleb's smile fade, seeing him brace himself every time we left the house, broke my heart. "We could leave," I said one night, lying in his bed, our fingers intertwined. "After graduation, go somewhere new, somewhere we can just be." He turned to me, his eyes bright in the dark. "You do that? Uproot your whole life." "For you?" "Yeah." He kissed my forehead, his lips lingering. "Let's do it. Wherever you go, I go." It was a promise, fragile but fierce, and I clung to it as the world closed in around us. Spring came, but the chill in the air wasn't just the weather. Caleb and I were careful now, less touching in public, more stolen moments behind closed doors. It wasn't shame, it was survival. The notes kept coming, slipped into my backpack, taped to my dorm door. Always the same word: freak. I didn't tell Caleb, but I think he knew. His eyes were sharper now, always scanning for threats, like he was guarding me even when we were just grabbing coffee. One afternoon, I was in the art studio, working on my final project, when Mia burst in, her face pale. "Ethan, you need to see this." She shoved her phone in my face. It was a post on X, from an anonymous account. A blurry photo of Caleb and me at the lake, my head on his shoulder, his arm around me. The caption read, "Guess the quarterback's got a new playbook." Disgusting. My stomach churned. "Who posted this?" "No idea," Mia said, her voice tight. "But it's spreading. People are commenting, Ethan. Ugly stuff." I grabbed my phone and called Caleb. He answered on the first ring. "I saw it," he said before I could speak. "I'm coming to you. Stay put." He was there in 10 minutes, his jaw set, his eyes blazing. "We're not hiding," he said, grabbing my hand. "Not anymore. Caleb, this could ruin you. Your scholarship, your team. I don't care." He stepped closer, his voice fierce. "I'm done letting them control us. I love you, Ethan. I'm not ashamed of that." His words were a lifeline, but fear still gnawed at me. "What do we do?" "We face it," he said simply. "Together." That night, he posted on X from his own account. A photo of us, the same one from the lake, but clearer, brighter, with a caption, "This is who I am. This is who I love. Deal with it." The response was immediate. Support poured in, friends, teammates, even strangers who'd been through the same fight. But there was hate too, venomous and loud. Caleb's coach called him in the next day, warning him to keep his personal life private if he wanted to stay on the team. My art professor, a kind woman with a sharp eye, pulled me aside and asked if I was okay, her voice heavy with concern. We were okay, but it was a battle. Caleb started spending more time at my dorm, away from the locker room whispers. I kept painting, pouring my fear and hope into every stroke. We talked about leaving more seriously now, San Francisco, maybe, or Seattle, somewhere we could breathe without looking over our shoulders. One night, we were at his place, cooking dinner together, when the doorbell rang. Caleb froze, his knife hovering over a tomato. "Stay here," he said, heading to the door. I followed anyway, my heart pounding. It was Jake, alone, his hands shoved in his pockets. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. Caleb crossed his arms. "What do you want?" Jake glanced at me, then back at Caleb. "I was a jerk. At the bar, on X I didn't get it. I still don't, not really. But you're my friend, man. I don't want to lose that." Caleb's shoulders relaxed, just a fraction. "You mean that?" "Yeah." Jake hesitated, then held out his hand. "I'm sorry." Caleb shook it, and I saw something shift in him. Relief, maybe, or hope. Jake didn't stay, but his apology was a crack in the wall we'd been up against. After he left, Caleb pulled me into his arms, his forehead against mine. "It's gonna be okay," he whispered. "Not easy, but okay." I nodded, clinging to him. "I love you," I said, the words easier now, like they'd always been true. "I love you too," he said, and we stood there, holding each other, as the world outside kept turning. Graduation was a month away, and we were counting down the days. We had a plan: save up, move west, start over. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And for the first time, I felt like we might actually make it. Graduation day was chaos. Caps and gowns, families snapping photos, the humid Ohio air thick with anticipation. Caleb and I stood side by side in the sea of graduates, our hands brushing as we waited for our names to be called. When he walked across the stage, his grin was brighter than the sun, and when it was my turn, I felt his eyes on me, steady and proud. After the ceremony, we slipped away from the crowds, finding a quiet spot by the campus lake. The water was still, reflecting the fading light, and for a moment, it was just us. "We did it," Caleb said, pulling me into a hug. "We did," I echoed, my heart full. That night, we celebrated at his place with Mia, his mom, and a few friends who'd stood by us. The living room was loud with laughter, music, and the clink of glasses. Jake was there, quieter than usual but trying, and I saw Caleb clap him on the shoulder, a silent thank you. As the party wound down, Caleb pulled me upstairs to his room. "Got something for you," he said, his voice soft. He handed me a small box, and inside was a leather cord bracelet, simple but sturdy, with a tiny silver charm shaped like a paintbrush. "Caleb," I looked up, my throat tight. "I know it's not much," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "But I saw it and thought of you. Thought maybe it'd remind you of us, wherever we go." I slipped it on, my fingers tracing the charm. "It's perfect." He smiled, then took my hand, leading me to the window. The stars were out, bright against the dark, and he wrapped his arms around me from behind. "San Francisco," he murmured. "You still in?" "More than ever," I said, leaning into him. We moved a month later, leaving behind the whispers and the notes, the weight of a town that wasn't ready for us. San Francisco was loud, vibrant, alive in a way I'd never known. We found a tiny apartment with creaky floors and a view of the bay, and for the first time, we could walk down the street holding hands without fear. It wasn't perfect. Caleb struggled to find a job that fit, and I took freelance art gigs while applying to galleries. We argued sometimes, about money, about the future, about the little things that pile up when you're building a life together. But every fight ended with us tangled in each other, apologizing, laughing, promising to keep going. One night, a year after we'd moved, we were on the rooftop of our building, watching the city lights. Caleb turned to me, his eyes catching the glow. "You know that night at my house?" he said. "When I kissed you?" I nodded, my heart skipping. "How could I forget?" "I was terrified," he admitted, his voice soft. "But it was the best thing I ever did, because it brought me here, with you." I kissed him then, under the stars, and felt the weight of everything we'd been through. the fear, the hate, the love that had carried us through it all. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living. And that night, the one I'd never forget, wasn't just about a kiss. It was about courage, about choosing each other against the odds, about building something real in a world that tried to tear us apart. It was about us, two kids from Ohio who found a home in each other, no matter where we were.